It's time for the Hockey Writers Grindline, a weekly show covering everything Detroit Red Wings. Brought to you by our own iconic top line of Wings writers. Sit back and enjoy the grind.
Welcome to the Hockey Writers Grindline. I'm Patrick Brown, your host and Coney enthusiast, and we are thrilled to have you watching our humble show. For the past 5 years, you've caught our column with the Hockey Writers, and now we're here with you to discuss the latest Red Wings news, rumors, and strategies. We are a 4-player unit for the second straight week because we have 2 very special guests today. Let's introduce our crew of experts, starting with Access Hockey MI Managing Editor Rachel Anderson, who is with us for the second straight week. Rachel, thanks for coming back. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Appreciate you taking time to join us again this week. So thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Up next, a familiar friend of the show, Mr. One and Only Ian McNaughton. Ian, it's been a little while. Glad to have you back. How you doing?
I'm good. It's glad to be back again. I think I'm Devin this week. Guy with glasses, not quite the hair, but I guess I'm Devin for 1 week. So there we go. It's good to see, really.
Well, you have set the stage. So for those of you watching at home, make sure you comment and let us know how Ian has done filling in for Devin.
Oh,
so set the stage pretty high there, Ian. Already, I like it.
I have already got -2 WAR. So far.
Dislike, and the show's not even posted yet. What is going on? Last but certainly not least, our recipient of the TGL Newcomer of the Year award, Mr. Kyle Knopp. Kyle, how you doing?
Great. Glad to be here, starting off my weekend with all of you.
Good stuff. Well, let's dive right in. We have a lot to talk about today. So something we've been doing lately that we've really enjoyed continuing: 1 good, 1 bad for the week. Didn't look like maybe a lot was going to happen for the Red Wings this past week. Obviously, no games as the playoffs are in full swing, but Red Wings were actually a bit busy. I don't know if you heard, and we'll talk about it a little bit, but they did re-sign Jeff Blasshill. Not surprising, but a mixed review. We'll talk about that. But just to start out talking about 1 good, 1 bad, you can talk about anything throughout the league, whatever you think, whatever comes to mind. So let's go ahead. Ian, we are going to put you on the spot and start with you this week.
I think my 1 good, I'm going to stick with Detroit. I like the positivity I heard from these exit interviews this past week. It seemed like there was a lot of positive words, a lot of positive energy from both Steve Yzerman, Jeff Blasshill, the players. You really like to see it after a tough season and all that's gone on this past year for the Red Wings. So I'm going to say the positivity is really cool. That's a good thing.
I like it. What about 1 bad? Anything bad to take away from the week?
The bad thing that stands out to me is the John Tavares incident last night against Montreal. I thought actually for the most, it's been a good week for the NHL in terms of press with playoff hockey and seeing all of the good action that we have for the last week. But then the Tavares thing obviously was just a really, really upsetting thing that happened on Thursday night. So best of luck to John Tavares. Hopefully he gets better. Hopefully he gets well soon. But man, that was a tough scene on Thursday.
I think we can all certainly agree on that, and encouraging reports coming out that he's doing much better today. He's been able to talk to some of his teammates and just sounds a lot better. So those are encouraging signs, and good call, Ian. We certainly wish John the best. Rachel, let's swing it over to you. 1 good, 1 bad for the week.
1 good would definitely have to be the busy Red Wings schedule we've had. So obviously off season, we're not playing, but like you said, it's been incredibly packed with Blasshill getting re-signed. But what I've loved is seeing all the ELCs coming out of this week.
Mm-hmm.
There was just an absolute flood of prospects getting signed for ELCs in the coming season. So that's really encouraging to see, just like Ian said, with the positivity, just kind of kept it rolling a little bit. Give us a lot to look forward to for training camp and the prospects tournament in September. So I'm really pumped about that. So I thought that was awesome. 1 bad, obviously Tavares, that's kind of on everyone's mind right now. He actually just has a concussion, so he got away with that one, all things considered. Pretty good. But aside from that, I think there's been an increase of bad blood and bad play during the playoffs. Obviously it's a tense time, but there's been an increase in kind of gnarly hits, maybe a little bit of recklessness. So you're seeing a lot more players get hauled off the ice, a lot more recklessness. And that's it just kind of comes with the season, but it's not a good thing. So that would be my one bad thing.
Absolutely. No, I agree. And going back to your good really quick. Yeah, I kind of geeked out when I saw Berggren with that ELC.
Yes.
I know we talked about him last episode, and
Yep.
he's kind of been, ever since the beginning of his season in the SHL, he's kind of been my pony, and I was pretty amped to see that. So
Well, he's officially
good
in the
stuff.
race, so good job.
Exactly. I don't think it was in doubt, but it's always nice to see it officially.
They called you first, right? Just to make sure that you were okay with him getting signed, right?
Yeah, and to make sure the terms were acceptable. We didn't want him to walk. We were worried. So
for sure, yeah.
Good stuff. Kyle, bring us home. One good, one bad for the week.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, all the good with the all the good with the Wings have been mentioned. You know, our ELCs are getting signed. The exit interviews were very positive. A lot of hope for next year. My good is definitely in this past week. I think the playoffs have just been phenomenal start to them. There's been high intensity, high energy. Every game has been right up until the end, very close and competitive. You know, the Washington-Boston series has gone to overtime 3 times in a row, possibly 4 times as we're recording this in the middle of the third period.
It's possible.
So, I mean, the level of play has just been unreal. And so it's been a great time to be a hockey fan and, you know, just loving postseason. So, and then my bad, you know, just kind of to echo what Rachel said, you know, wouldn't be playoffs unless Nazem Kadri got, you know, suspended in the first round, and we got to see that again this year. So, and I think that has to do with the scheduling and maybe, you know, the inter division play all season really created some of that bad blood. But yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see how it goes on, especially as we get to the next round when there's a lot more on the line.
So shout out to, of all people, my mom. Love you, Mom. We were on the phone earlier this week, and one of the first things she said to me was, "Did you see Colorado? They're up to that Claude Lemieux stuff again." And I just thought that was absolutely phenomenal. And Mom, props to you. I had to give you a shout out for this because you called it out before most people watching it. So cheers to that. So let's talk about what was a lot of good this week, at least in some people's opinion. The Wings made a decision, at least about the coach next year. I don't think it surprised anybody. Jeff Blasshill was brought back on, last I checked, a reported 2-year deal. I don't believe those terms were ever officially released. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I may have missed it, but last I saw it was a reported 2-year deal. And reactions were, shall we say, mixed, right? So I think a lot of fans disappointed in the lack of playoff appearances in 5 years and everything else. So it's a fair point, but let's talk about this for 1 minute. You look at Blasshill with, yes, his record with the Red Wings, 172, 221, and 62. Obviously hasn't made the season, the playoffs in 5 seasons, and the playoffs he did make, they went 1-4 in the playoffs. So not terribly exciting there, but you look at what he did before then. His non-Red Wings coaching career, 225, 127, 10, and 28. The 10 are ties. That used to be a thing. And obviously, he won a Clark Cup with Indiana in the USHL. He won a Calder Cup with Grand Rapids in the AHL. So his pedigree of being able to take these young teams and get the most out of them speaks for itself, but yet fans are upset given recent results. So I ask you, was it a mistake for the Red Wings to bring back Jeff Blasshill, or was it the right move? And if it was a mistake, well, what would you have done? So we're going to start in the middle this time. So Rachel, we will start with you.
Awesome. Yeah, I think, honestly, saying it was a mixed bag of results and reaction is probably the best way to describe it. And and I think now I took some time to kind of think about it and chew on it a little bit, because I wasn't surprised at all. I was questioning Yzerman a little bit, which is very bold to do, but I was questioning him because obviously there hasn't been, you know, a lot of, at least what we can see, is progress. But I took some time. I listened to Yzerman's press conference, and he pointed out a lot of qualities that happen behind the scenes that we don't see play out on the ice. We don't see that come to fruition. And he made it very clear that the reasons that he chose Blasshill for the job and to remain with the team is because he has experience with patience and young development. And Yzerman hasn't made a secret out of how young he wants this team to be. He wants them to, be fast, be elite, but he doesn't want them to have that age like we've always had when Kenny Holland was part of it. And Blasshill, he says that, he's got the level head, he's got the patience for that kind of development, and he works very closely with Yzerman. They have a very transparent business relationship. And all of those qualities, those are things that we don't see play out. And a lot of times the rosters that are chosen each night, the lines that are chosen each night, it's a decision made by Yzerman and Blasshill together. It's not just Blash. So I think all in all, after listening to Steve, I'm not a GM. In hindsight, I probably would have approached it a little bit differently, but that's probably why I'm not the GM. So I would say in the grand scheme of things, I think the next 2 years are going to be Blashill's best, because I think he's equipped for this. And Yzerman pointed out too, that coaches develop much like players do. You have to go from the USHL to the AHL to the NHL. Not all coaches jump right into it, like not all prospects jump into it. So they've been working really closely. And I think even if we have doubts in Blashill's ability, I think we should still trust Yzerman's logic behind it. And I think the next 2 seasons are going to be really good for the team, all things considered.
You talk about Ken Holland and how Yzerman's making the team younger. With Ken Holland, I'll tell you, to this day, anytime I see Yarncroc take a shot with Nashville, I curse David Legwan's name. That one still bothers me to this day. But in any case, I digress. Kyle, let's swing it over to you. I know earlier in the season you even did a piece on it. You were not Blashill's biggest fan. So what say you right now?
Yeah, so this season I was definitely one of his toughest critics, and and I've talked about it a few times. I thought the product that he was bringing to the table was stale and just lacked creativity. I thought those were our 2 biggest problems. But I think Rachel makes fantastic points, and like Yzerman said in the exit interviews and whatnot, it's a lot of the relationship behind the scene, the building the trust with the players behind the scene, the building the trust between the front office staff, the training staff, the scouts, and all your other coaches, and just kind of meshing together as a full group. And it's something that, we definitely do not see as casual fans. And so I think Rachel brings up a great point in that, there's so many little things that contributed to this decision that we would have no idea was even on the table. And with everything going on with the way this team is going, it makes the most sense to just keep the most pieces in place, especially in the development side of things. So I think from the hockey business standpoint, this is the best decision. And I like it. I like the confidence of 2 years. Don't let him hang on for 1 year and have the whole, sword hanging over his head type of season. Tell him he's got 2 years. You can put out some metrics you want him to hit. But, let him take this young group that Yzerman has really been trying to get finally together and let him see what he can do with it. And, I'm going to be the first person, in line to print out my story and eat it if I have to. I would love to be proven wrong, but I just think, the 2-year deal is probably the best way to go because it gives Blasshill that confidence, but also gives that exit plan.
Sure. Yeah, I think we're all kind of hoping at this point, including yourself, that the crow tastes really good. So there's the hope for that. I know you're hoping that too. Ian, bring us home. Your thoughts on Blasshill?
I thought it was a fine move. Like it doesn't make. I don't think it makes him worse. I don't think it makes him better per se. I just think this just keeps the train going for another 2 years. And we talked about like both Rachel and Kyle talked. The behind the scenes stuff. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I think it'd be tough from a personable standpoint to fire somebody after the season we've just gone through with COVID restrictions, all the boundaries and all the, behind the scenes stuff that we didn't know in terms of just going from the arena to home. Like we're not doing a normal life like we're used to. So that's why, from the personable aspect of, person to person, I get why you don't want to fire him either, because the team did improve. I think we can all agree for the most part, the team did improve.
Sure.
It would be tough to fire somebody even after they just made an improvement and all that they went through behind the scenes coaching the team this season. The other thing I wanted to throw out there is that I don't think the options were great for this team outside of Blasshill either, in terms of finding a new coach to replace Blasshill with. I mean, I don't know that you could have brought somebody like John Tortorella. I don't know that he would have made sense. We've talked about
Sure.
Gerard Gallant on this show before.
Yep.
Not sure if he's the developmental coach that we've been talking about,
Agreed.
that we've been wanting.
Yep.
Rick Tockett is another name that gets tossed around. I would prefer him more as an assistant coach than a head coach right now, but you could have brought him in as well. I don't think any of those guys are considered upgrades to Jeff Blasshill at the moment.
Sure.
But I think for the most part, it's a fine move. I'm interested to see 2 years from now if we think the Red Wings take the next step like we all think they are, and they're going to be a competitive team, maybe a wild card team, then how do we feel about Jeff Blasshill? Maybe we think this is a great signing. This is a great move. We should have, signed him for longer, but we'll see what 2 years down the road has us thinking and saying.
Yeah, well, I think some things to focus on, to pay attention to, might be assistant coach Dan Bilesma was not retained.
Yes, that was really fascinating. I thought about.
I mean, the power play. We don't even need to talk about it. We know how special
please
teams
don't.
win.
Please don't. Just move on.
We've been having a good show. Happy.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, why I bring that up, something to pay attention to is who moves into that assistant coach spot.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see a Rick Tockett move into the assistant coach? Ian, you just said it. You'd rather see Tockett as an assistant as opposed to a head coach. Well, here's your opportunity, potentially, right? Some things to keep an eye on.
Not saying that I'm starting the Tockett to Detroit thing. Not saying I started that, but
take that post down from Twitter. Take that post down from Twitter.
That's a great point that you mentioned, Pat, about Bilesma also being let go.
Yep.
He's someone who, obviously, we don't need to get into the power play, but he struggled in that regard. That was his thing. That was supposed to be his bread and butter, and it just didn't work all year. So
it sounds like too, from what Steve said, that there was actually a little bit of a power struggle too.
Yeah.
Where Bilesma was really hoping to vie for that head coach spot, kind of like he did in Pittsburgh, and it just wasn't going to happen. So it sounds like it was almost like an amicable, not necessarily like you're fired, but they went their separate ways. They had different ideas.
Yep, absolutely. And just some things to pay attention to. Who's going to slide into that spot? And could it be potentially, I mean, you're not going to see a Gallant, I don't think, slide in. There's going to be head coaching jobs, vacancies that they're lining up to hire him. So who does slide in there, and could it be a natural progression if it doesn't work out with Blasshill? So more to come on that, but keep your eyes peeled. Good stuff. Good conversation so far. Let's take a quick time out. I want to thank you, the viewer, for watching our show. Give us a like, subscribe to the Hockey Writers channel here on YouTube. If that's where you're watching us, there's so much good stuff on here. Blackhawks banter, Sabres scoop, Chicks and Sticks, and always the OG show, Hockey Writers Live with Mark Sheg, which we were privileged to be a part of this past week. The last show was an all Red Wings show. Started out with the Athletics' Max Boltman, so make sure you check it out. He's got some awesome insight into the team, obviously, and then we kind of brought it home the second half. So make sure you check it out. Follow us on Twitter. Sign up for our morning newsletter. Any way we can pay bills, that's what we do, and we appreciate you watching. And comment. We love all the comments. We'll get to those in a little bit on the show, and we try to interact and converse a little bit with you guys. So thanks for watching. It means a lot to us. So, all right, paid some bills. We're good to go. Let's get back to it here. Something really exciting, although not surprising, is the Red Wings' top prospect. I don't even think we can say arguably. I think undeniably the Red Wings' top prospect, Moritz Seider, SHL Defenseman of the Year, which is super cool to see for such a young kid in a league of men. Last month, also, he won the Elite Prospects Award back in mid-late April. So a couple of accolades. Gotta ask, and Kyle, we're going to start with you, even though Rachel, I want to start with you because you have the expertise, but we started with you last time, and I got to give Kyle a fair shot. So, Kyle, let's start with you.
I will concede to Kyle.
Well, I'll try to make it quick so we can let the expert come in and really talk about what she's seeing live.
Oh, you guys flatter me.
We brought you back for a reason. It wasn't for us to talk.
So Kyle, do you see that success in the SHL translate to the NHL level?
Oh, absolutely. In my mind, he was not only named the defensive player of the year, but the junior player of the year. And to get both of those in the same season just shows his work ethic and shows his maturity at that level. And, in my mind, I think that's going to translate great. He's already had a full year in Grand Rapids.
Mm-hmm.
He had a full year in the SHL. He's just racking up all these awards. I mean, he's hungry, and I am ready to have him feast.
Well, there you go. Analogy is brought to you by Kyle Knopp. I like it. So, Rachel, let's swing it over to you. I'm sure you saw him quite a bit in person during his Grand Rapids days. So, even enlighten us a little bit. What has changed in his game? Has anything changed, or he's just matured as a player?
I would say his confidence, and he matured as a player. When he was in Grand Rapids, obviously he made a big splash. He did very well that season. But the interesting thing about him is that he's a kid at heart. He's very lighthearted. He just loves the game. Yeah. And I think that's what drives his competition and his compete level and his desire to learn more. So there was plenty of practices and warm-ups where he was literally working with forwards to figure out what they did so he could better do his job as a defenseman. So I think to me that shows a lot of initiative. It shows a lot of desire for understanding and racking up these awards. Like, keep in mind, SHL, yes, it is a league full of men. It's a very elite league. The ice is bigger, so it's a lot more playmaking, a lot less speed. So that's one thing to consider. However, just even being able to be eligible for an award like that, it shows that he has his maturation is just far beyond what it was even a season ago. And I think a lot of that has to do with just how he pushes. So I wouldn't be surprised if it translated really well over to the NHL. The only thing I would say is, kind of take it with a grain of salt. He has a lot to learn still. So he could very well be a phenomenon coming to Detroit, and I really hope he is. I think he has the ability to. But at the same time, he's going to have some learning curves. So there's going to need to be some patience there. But I do think that his hunger and his passion and his desire and just his general nature and work ethic are really going to drive it. And I think that's what's going to help him translate, the SHL experience over to the NHL level.
Now, Rachel, I do want to ask you a follow-up question since we have you here and talk about his potential for leadership. Because I'm not sure what you saw in Grand Rapids and how he carried himself there. I'm sure it was great. But something that stood out to me is watching a clip of when Rogel was eliminated from the final.
Yep.
And Seider, this 20-year-old kid, was the one. Younger than Ian, and that takes a lot. He was skating around. First of all, he looked like he took it pretty hard. But then he was skating around and giving all of his teammates a fist bump, something you expect a seasoned veteran to do, not a 20-year-old kid. So can you kind of expand or enlighten us on his leadership abilities and where you think that might land him eventually on the Wings roster?
I don't want to speak too soon because he's got a couple seasons to go till I think he's considered one of the vets, but I do see him kind of being fashioned into a leadership role. So whether or not it comes with an A on his jersey or a C or whatever that ends up looking like for him, that would be really cool. And I think he would take that very seriously because obviously given that clip, and I watched that too, it almost brought me to tears because he's giving everybody hugs. And
it was great.
Yeah, and he's a really heartfelt player. There was plenty of times in the locker room I'd be doing interviews and he knows he made one mistake that it didn't cost the game, but it was one mistake. And he's sitting there trying to figure out how he did that, how he can make it better, and just taking it really to heart. And it could be a blessing or a curse, but I think in the long run, it could set him up for a leadership position. He does have that disposition. And I think if given time, he has that maturity for it too. But he does, I think, again, it comes with the passion for the game itself. And he takes it personally and he wants others to know that, he takes responsibility and he understands. And I do think it's reflective. It's indicative of his nature. And I think that could set him up for success as a leader in the future.
And what you have described in the last, both of your answers, is a true student of the game. if you will.
Yes.
He's studying. He wants to know how to get better. You remarked, I didn't know this. You remarked about him talking to the forwards to learn what they're, and I just think that's remarkable and shows a lot of initiative and makes him a true student of the game. So super cool. Ian, sorry to keep you waiting. But your thoughts on Seider and how that's going to translate to the NHL?
You brought me on here to look like Devin. You didn't bring me on here to talk like Devin. So it's a good thing I'm not talking a whole lot. No, but I mean,
do your best.
Well, I was gonna say it's kind of like what Rachel said about patience and preaching patience. That's what this whole rebuild has been about. It's just patience. Good things are coming down the road. We don't need to rush it. And obviously, there's a lot of talented young defensemen in the league. Like we're seeing Cale Makar do really well. Mikhail Sergachev in Tampa Bay is doing really well. Quinn Hughes in Vancouver. I could go on and on about all like the top young D-man in the league right now. And I know we all think Seider fits in that bill of an extremely talented young D-man who's just waiting to take the league by storm. But it's coming. It's not going to happen, it wasn't happening this past year. It maybe isn't going to happen like we think this next year in terms of just, hitting it right away, connecting right away. It might take a little bit just to get him going, get him set up for the NHL. But again, like this whole rebuild, good things are coming. Just take a deep breath.
Agreed.
It's gonna work. It's gonna work out perfectly.
Patience, and I wonder. I wonder, and I hope that maybe there's a little bit more leeway from fan expectations when he enters the league. The nice thing is, and I mean no disrespect, but he's a defenseman, so you're not going to expect him to come in and start scoring every other game.
If he does,
that's not some. I don't think anybody's going to complain. But hopefully that gives a little bit of a longer leash, because the last thing you want to see is people get down on him because they expect the world of him right away. And he seems to be mature enough to handle that anyways, but certainly something we all hope to see, because the excitement is mounting. I don't think there's a soul who thinks he will not be on the blue line on opening night next season. So we're looking forward to seeing where that goes. Okay, so we've got 2 segments left, and I'm really looking forward to this next one. Kind of a new segment, but you guys have continued to comment. So we're going to keep going with our comment corner and remark about some of the questions that popped up in our on our YouTube page in our last episode. So thank you for commenting, for watching, for liking, for subscribing. Like I said, it really does mean a lot to us. It's pretty cool. We're here and we see people watching our stuff and commenting on our stuff, and it's really cool. So keep them coming. So a repeat commenter, Mr. Sean Evans, cheers to you, Sean. He posted and he asked why Mantha seems more productive with Washington than he did in Detroit. So just calling a few things out. The regular season, when he was traded to Washington, he started out hot, ended up 8 points in 14 regular season games. Good production, nothing crazy, but fine, I would say. And then for a guy like Mantha, that is, if that's Glendening putting that up, we're thrilled. I should throw that out there.
That's
2
like
points
you on
in
league night, right? 8 points in
exactly. 2 points in 3 playoff games. I don't know what happened tonight. I saw Washington scored a goal. I'm not sure if he contributed, so don't hit me on the comments in that. It's the information I have at the time. But let's do a quick round robin. We've got a few comments to get to. Sean's question about Mantha. Why does he seem more productive with Washington? Ian, we'll swing it back to you. Start with you first.
I was just going to say, just because he was part of the biggest deal in the trade deadline, when you're part of a high-profile deal like that, you're going to get more attention. And Washington, for a bunch of reasons outside of Mantha, has been getting a whole lot of attention. So Mantha's going to get even more attention because he's also playing on a high-profile team like the Capitals right now. That's why I don't know if he is, like, I think, like you say, Pat, he might have a few more points. I think I was doing the stats. He has 0.57 points per game in Washington, and he had 0.50 in his time in Detroit this season. So I don't think it's a huge swing. I don't think it's that much different, but I just think it's because of the team that he's playing for now and all the attention they're receiving.
Sure. If I could slide my 2 cents in before we kick it over to Rachel, he's surrounded by a heck of a lot more talent than he is in Detroit.
Yeah.
So sorry if I stole anybody's thunder there, but I just had to sneak that one in. And Rachel, now that I've took that low-hanging fruit, what say you?
Well, lucky for you, I have two things. That was one of them, and I crossed it off. So the first thing, I don't do that low-hanging stuff. So the first thing that I just want to point out is that it's essentially a jump start. So you go from being in a team where you are in the developmental phase for essentially your entire career at that point. So he went from Grand Rapids to Detroit and has since been on and off the bench and, getting in consistent minutes and things like that. To go from that to a whole heck of a lot more consistency and more responsibility and an increase in his minutes every night. And just like Ian said too, they're getting a lot of notoriety right now. Wilson is kind of a name drop that happens all the time. So the team in general is getting a lot of publicity, and kind of partnered with that and his increase in time on ice. And the fact that it's essentially you're taking from what's the norm and going into a new scenario where you want to make an impression, you want to be important to the team, and you want to finally get that top spot. Of course, he's going to push harder. So his production might not show up, but I do think he might have a little bit more pep in his step because of that. It's a fresh start for him. So in any situation, any of us, if we were in a fresh position, in a fresh situation where we could actually prove ourselves finally and actually be out from under the developmental umbrella, then we would probably push just as hard too. So I think that has a lot to do with what is perceived to be his increase in productivity.
And there is an interesting sentiment there that did Mantha ever get a true fair shake? You look at the comments that Devillano made a few years ago that kind of shocked a lot of people, kind of threw Mantha under the bus pretty early in his career. So there's some interesting sentiment there when we think about it. But Kyle, Anthony Mantha playing with Washington, what say you? Performing better, and why?
Yeah, so kind of to echo what Rachel was just saying, with that, he comes with more confidence. And so when he was in Detroit, he was kind of playing, Blasshill was notorious for the Blasshill blender and for playing the top three lines as though any of them were this true number one line. So there's a lot of shakeup. And so in Washington, Mantha now has this familiarity on the second line and kind of found his role. And with that, with the fresh start, with the coaching change, the new players to kind of support him, that supporting cast has given him a fresh set of confidence. And with that confidence is given him, more of a puck holder's mentality of, he's been holding on to the puck more on the rush than he was in Detroit. And actually, I saw a stat earlier today in the game, Friday's game, we were taping on Friday night. And he's first or second in the playoffs in chances created off the rush and chances taken from the slot right now. And he doesn't have, I don't think he has any goals or has one goal right now. I should know that. But, he's getting those chances. And with that, once he kind of pops one or two of those in, that confidence is really going to skyrocket, and it's just going to take off from there.
Unless he scored tonight, I don't think he had scored in the playoffs yet. I think both of his points were assists, if I'm not mistaken. But regardless, your points remain the same, and I think they're all really good call-outs. So let's move on to our next comment from, and God, I'm going to love saying these next two users. The Paradox Destroyer, this one's for you. Followed up on our Larkin conversation from last week and brought up some fair points. And the question pretty much boils down to, is Larkin actually a first-line center? Should he be considered a first-line center? And interestingly enough, by the way, since that question was posted, Max Boltman was talking about how, in fact, Yzerman's zoning in on him being a second-line center and focusing more on his two-way game, even since this comment was posted. So, Paradox Destroyer, you're on to something here, potentially.
You could be the next GM of Detroit.
There you go. There you go. So, Rachel, let's start with you on this. Is Larkin a first-line center? Yes or no?
Man, these kind of questions are really tough. Coming from
I said yes or no.
I can never just say yes or no. I would say yes, but he would be a good utility player for first and second. And the reason I say that is, yes, he is first line center material, is because of the role he is now designed to fill. So as these younger players come in, he does have top line ability. He has the leadership, obviously being the captain. That's why he's the captain. But he has the leadership and the skill set to allow for opportunities for the younger wingers to be able to do what they've got to do and create those chances for them at the top and teach them to be on the top. However, he can also be shifted to the second, where he can kind of take a backseat role and let newer centers come in and do what they've got to do. So I think he's kind of in this like transitional period where he is now being looked at as one of the development focuses and one of the players that is going to be kind of carrying the burden of helping develop and grow some of these younger players coming through. So I think he does have a skill set to be a top line, but I think you're going to see that kind of switch on and off, especially in this next season, just because of the people coming up. It's not because of a lack of ability. It's because of a need somewhere else.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Kyle,
swing it over to you. Your thoughts on Larkin being a first line center?
Yeah. So I think Rachel brings up some great points, but in the end, I want to say that I think Larkin is a true second line center. Before even the comments came out, it always kind of seemed like he was more of a defensive minded, 200-foot responsible center type prototype. And not that that's a bad thing, but you usually want your first line centers to really be those playmaker guys or those snipers. I mean, you want your first line to be scoring more than, having to rely on shutting down the other team to score. So I think right now, with what he's surrounded with talent-wise, he is our first line center. There isn't anyone else that's a true first line center. But I think if you were to be on any other team with some talent surrounding him, I think he would be a natural second line.
Really good points. Kyle. Ian, over to you. Your thoughts on Larkin being a first line center?
Most of my friends, if they want to hurl Red Wings jokes at me, it's usually that Dylan Larkin is an above average second line center. And that usually gets me. It's really tough. I have really bad friends, but the point is that I
not anymore.
Calling them out now. No, but I see Dylan Larkin. I mean, again, I'm in Vancouver. I see him fulfilling like a Bo Horvat type second line center type role, where it's like he's a leader. He can contribute if you need him to be, but he's also responsible on the back end too. So I right now he is a first line center. In the future, when the team's good, he probably can fill both roles if you really need him to. I think it's wrong to say that he isn't a first line center, because I think he has, the talent and the ability to be a first line center. Mm-hmm. And I also just think it's flat out wrong to say that he is a second line center, that he isn't a first line center. So
take personal offense.
Yeah. I take this stuff seriously, and then when my friends say that, it's really frustrating. But no, to answer the original question, I do think he is a first line center, and he will be for a long time. I think he'll be a first line center on this team. So
sure. For what it's worth, I think, to your points, all of you, right now, he's one of the best first line center options they have. Down the road, probably not. But what I will say is, I don't think I've ever heard any fan complain about a second line center Selke Trophy winner. So if that's the way it ends up,
there's
I think
always a first.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's true. All right. Last but not least, Bad Touch, ladies and gentlemen, stated that players on the Red Wings like Hirose, Smith, Svechnikov haven't gotten a fair shake. They've taken a back seat to more of those veteran players like Helm, Filppula, Nielsen. You agree with that? Has that been an issue this year? Did that bother you this past season with the amount of ice time we were seeing the kids play? And I don't even remember where we started last time. So Kyle, we're going to start with you.
All right. Yeah, I think they kind of got a fair shake, or not quite a fair shake this year. I think the preference was given to some of those veterans that are on the expiring contracts. And, looking back at it, my thought is probably the reason that was happening was, Blasshill and Yzerman really wanted to get them more ice time, get them more looks, so they could then trade them. we were talking to Mark the other day, and getting more darts for the dartboard, he said, with the upcoming draft. And I think that's a great way to put it, because you're not really sure what's going to hit, what's not. There's always gems late in the draft, especially in a draft like this where the talent pool is a little more thinned across the top. So I think me speculating is, yes, some of those veterans got more ice time, but it was really to kind of bolster their stock approval, their draft stock. There we go. And really kind of get the most they could out of them by the trade deadline. But I think, moving forward, I see this team kind of getting rid of those contracts more and letting these young players really come into their own.
Makes sense, Kyle. Makes sense. Ian, over to you. What'd you think about the youngsters and their ice time this season?
I would have liked to see the youngsters more. I get why you don't necessarily play them this season when you still have the really bad deals coming off the books. You don't really want to pay a guy a large sum of money to sit on the bench or sit up in the press box. So I get why you play the big contracts. I just also think if the organization really wanted, like if it was Blasshill or Yzerman, if they really wanted to play the younger guys, they would make it work. It wouldn't just be to fill in for injuries or because someone's on the COVID list or whatever reason. If you wanted to play the young guys, you would have played the young guys. That's just how I feel. And it's not meant to be a criticism. Again, I trust Steve Yzerman. I trust his plan. I'm all aboard that train. But If you wanted to play them, great. If not, I totally understand. Hopefully next year, we can see more of the young guys with some of these deals coming off the table, but we'll see. Who knows?
Sure. And I mean, Rachel, you've seen all of these players up close, personal. The level of talent, their work ethic, and then you see them sitting in the taxi at the NHL level. So what do you think about how they were leveraged this year?
Well, I have a hard time not taking it personally, being that, I've watched these guys for years. I mean, I saw Hirose when he was still with State. So watching them go through and working tirelessly and to then get pulled up to the taxi squad or whatever the case may be, to then not get ice, it's really hard, and you feel for them because they go through all that training. They think this is a good shot for them to get ice time, and then it just never happens. And then they end up sitting in the press box. And I know Svechnikov has kind of had a really rough development period because he had that injury and he's been inconsistent. Hirose and Smith has been consistent. Hirose's been consistent. So it's really hard to not see them get that ice time. But just like everybody else has been saying, there's probably a method to it. You do have these expensive players that, why would you spend all that money to not play them? It doesn't make any sense. But then again, it's a cost benefit kind of thing. I'm sure that they're weighing too. And, these guys do have a little bit more time. Yzerman alluded to, Smith getting a lot more Red Wings time next season. He was sounding pretty confident that he's going to be getting a contract up there. As far as Svechnikov goes, there's a lot of talks of him being trade bait or expansion or whatever. And Hirose, I think, is going to get a good shot next season. He's an incredible player, and he's probably one of the most underrated. So I think these all are going to get their own chance in a unique and a longer term chance in the next season. But I do understand the logic behind it. I mean, I wouldn't want to pay someone a ton of money just to sit there and, keep track of face-offs. It just doesn't make sense. So, I mean, it's not fun for the youngsters, but I think, and just like we've been preaching this whole time, it's patience, and these players are no different. They're still growing, they're still developing, and it's a test to their mental fortitude as well through this whole process.
I know. I'll speak for Devin here, and Svechnikov's usage throughout the season drove him crazy. I could.
Take the hat off.
Pat, you got it.
Wait, hang on. We'll have some fun. Hang on.
I was gonna say, Pat. There you go.
All right, how is that good? That good?
Perfect.
Good.
Devin.
That's really good.
I was ready for that. So that's how we're gonna finish the show. That's exciting. But speaking for Devin, I know that it drove him crazy how Blasshill used Svechnikov this season. I agree with all of you. I think the youngsters, I would have liked to have seen more of them. The one thing I really wish I would have seen is Smith on the ice with Jamie Benn the game after he took out Larkin. And I will always be bitter about that because Corey Perry had to fight yesterday, and he didn't mean to hurt Tavares. So I'm still bitter about that, but we'll move on.
He'll get his chance.
Yeah.
It'll be Colorado and the Red Wings all over.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I like it.
That.
Now that's exciting to think about, isn't it?
Minus the face smashing.
Yes. Let's leave that out.
Yeah, right.
Really good stuff. Thank you, everybody who commented. Please keep them coming. We will engage with you in the comments, and then any questions you might have for our upcoming show, you better believe we'll give you a shout out, and who knows, I may take off my hat for the first time in 24 episodes. So there you go. All right, to finish our show, let's wrap with our quick hits. Guys, the World Championships are starting up, and we would be remiss if we did not mention the World Championships. So really want to know, no explanation, just what player are you going to be watching? What team are you going to be keeping an eye on? And Ian, we'll start with you.
Player Matty Beniers from Team USA, and the team I'm watching is Team Canada at the World Championship.
Awesome. Love it. Rachel, over to you. What do you got?
I am watching Owen Power, and then I'm watching Team Sweden.
Love it. Kyle, bring us home. Who you watching?
I'm also going to be watching Power. I'd like to see him live up to his hype. And then I'm watching Team Finland. They're technically the reigning champions, and like to see them, kind of repeat.
Cheater, you're not supposed to explain.
I can't.
Breaking the rules.
No fair.
Breaking the rules. Well, if you're ready for this one, and I'm ready for the comments, so let me hear it. Justin Abdelkader, Team USA.
Oh.
Let's hear it. Somebody had to do it.
You just lost us like 50 likes.
My real one's Owen Power, but how could I not have fun?
This video is
and Brian Boyle as well.
This video is not getting monetized now because of that. Way to go.
And well, that's how I bring us home. So that is our show. Ian and Rachel, we cannot thank you enough for joining us, for helping us fill out the team. As I always say, every time you're on, we'll leave a locker stall open for you. You're welcome anytime, and just really appreciate you taking the time out. Kyle, a pleasure as always. And you, the viewer, like, subscribe, comment. Thanks for spending some time with us. Looking forward to seeing you again real soon. Thanks, everybody.